Emily Hawthorne's fingers danced across the keyboard, her eyes fixed on the words materializing on the computer screen. Her life, much like her novels, was filled with twists and surprises. As a writer, she was always drawn to the untold stories, the secrets hidden just beneath the surface of everyday life. When her agent suggested she move to a remote European village to find new inspiration, she embraced the idea without hesitation. Her new car meandered along the winding country roads, her gaze captivated by the scenery outside the window. Lush fields, ancient stone walls, and distant hills loomed in the landscape, all shrouded in a tranquil mystery. She had arrived in this forgotten corner of the world, where an old mill stood by the river, its wheel no longer turning, yet its presence imbuing the place with a story waiting to be told. As she reached the village, the locals greeted her arrival with curiosity and warmth. They helped her with her luggage, introduced her to local customs and lore, and soon enough a particular tale caught her interest, the legend of the old mill. It was said that the mill was home to a restless spirit that roamed the grounds at night, searching for something unknown. Emily's new home was a cozy cottage on the edge of the village, just a stone's throw from the mill. She was immediately charmed by the tranquility and beauty of the place, yet there was an inexplicable chill in the air. She decided to explore the mysterious mill after settling in, seeking the stories that lay hidden within. As dusk settled, Emily sat by the fireplace, perusing old books and documents about the mill that the villagers had lent her. She learned that the mill had a history dating back centuries, witnessing the rise and fall of the village, carrying with it a weight of sorrow and secrets. She felt a strong urge to uncover the mill's secrets, to bring to light the stories that had been buried for too long. Just as she was about to retire for the night, a strange sound carried through the air from the distance, like the wind howling through the mill's cracks. Emily's heart raced as she knew that her adventure was only just beginning. The next day, Emily met with Tom at the village's small cafe. Tom was an enthusiastic historian who knew the legends of the mill like the back of his hand. His eyes sparkled with an inner fire as he spoke of the mill, as if the ancient tales were etched in his very blood. "Emily, you won't believe it," Tom whispered, a hint of mystery in his voice. "The mill was built in the 16th century, a time when it was the busiest place in these parts. But as time passed, it fell into disuse, becoming a place shunned by the villagers." Tom filled her in on the history, explaining how the mill's last owner, an old man named Henry, had vanished one stormy night, never to be seen again. Since then, villagers had reported strange noises coming from the mill, whispers one moment, sobs the next, and some even claimed to have seen the ghost of Henry haunting the grounds. Intrigued and undeterred, Emily decided to explore the mill again, this time in the light of day, hoping to find clues that would shed light on the night's eerie events. Afternoon found Emily walking towards the mill, her steps deliberate and her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the path, a stark contrast to the brooding silhouette of the mill in the distance. As she approached, she noticed the mill's door ajar, as if inviting her in. She pushed the door open, and a musty odor assaulted her senses. The interior was dim and chilly, with rays of sunlight barely piercing the gloom through the broken windows. Emily's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing walls adorned with strange symbols that sent a shiver down her spine. They appeared to be ancient incantations, their meaning lost to time but still potent with a sense of foreboding. In a corner of the mill, Emily discovered a pile of old books and journals. She carefully opened one of the journals, the front page bearing a name, Elizabeth Henry, the daughter of the mill's late owner. The ink was faded, but Emily could still make out passages describing Elizabeth's fear of the mill and her father's peculiar behavior. As Emily delved deeper into the journal's contents, she heard a soft rustling from above. Looking up, she saw a shadow flit across the staircase leading to the upper floor. Her heart raced, but her curiosity propelled her forward. She ascended the stairs cautiously, the creak of each step echoing through the empty mill. On the second floor, she found a room hidden from view, filled with old furniture and forgotten belongings. In the center of the room stood a dusty table, upon which lay an open journal. Emily recognized Elizabeth's handwriting, and she began to read the final entries, which spoke of Elizabeth's dread of the mill and her father's strange rituals. Just as Emily was immersed in the journal, she heard footsteps from downstairs. She tensed, her flashlight's beam sweeping across the room before she slowly descended the stairs. The footsteps seemed to be coming from the basement, a place she had yet to explore. Cautiously, she opened the door to the basement, a cold draft greeting her as she did. The basement was shrouded in dampness and decay, the sound of water droplets echoing off the walls. She found a large stone cistern, its surface littered with objects. As she leaned in to get a closer look, a gust of wind blew through, causing the flashlight's beam to dance across the water and reveal a vague figure beneath the surface. Emily recoiled in horror, but when she looked again, there was nothing but the still water and the floating debris. At that moment, the recording device emitted a shrill noise, and Emily checked it to find the needle wildly oscillating, indicating an unusual electromagnetic activity. She knew this could be evidence of the supernatural. She decided to leave the device next to the cistern, hoping to capture more evidence. As she was about to leave the basement, she heard footsteps behind her. Whipping around, her flashlight's beam swept the empty basement, finding nothing. But her heart pounded in her chest, a sense of dread settling over her. She quickened her pace, nearly running back to the mill's first floor. Emily knew she needed more help to uncover the mill's secrets. She decided to reach out to a specialist who studied paranormal phenomena, hoping he could provide professional advice and assistance. With the strange occurrences at the mill weighing on her mind, Emily decided to delve deeper during the day when the sunlight might ward off some of the fear that gripped her at night. Armed with a flashlight, camera, and basic tools, she set out to explore the mill again, hoping the daylight would reveal clues that eluded her the night before. The morning sun cast long shadows across the landscape as Emily made her way to the mill. The wind rustled through the trees, and the scent of damp earth filled the air. She approached the mill, its weathered exterior looking more foreboding than ever in the harsh light of day. Stepping inside, Emily was struck by the contrast between the morning light filtering through the broken windows and the deep shadows that clung to the corners of the mill. She began her investigation, scrutinizing every room and every nook with a keen eye. On the first floor, she discovered charred remnants of letters near the fireplace, their edges blackened and curling. The faint script on the fragments hinted at something ominous, sending a shiver down her spine. As she ventured further into the mill, Emily found herself in a room that appeared to have been a resting area for the mill's workers in times past. The walls were adorned with faded portraits, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow her as she moved. The sensation was disconcerting, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. In a corner of the room, Emily uncovered a hidden drawer containing an old Bible and various personal items. Tucked within the pages of the Bible was a yellowed photograph of a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to Elizabeth Henry. Was this her granddaughter? Emily wondered, or perhaps her daughter. As Emily was engrossed in her findings, she heard a soft sound from above, like the padding of footsteps on the creaky floorboards. Her heart leaped into her throat, but her curiosity drove her to investigate. She cautiously ascended the stairs, the wooden planks protesting under her. On the second floor, she discovered a locked room. With a firm push, the door swung open, and a gust of cold air rushed out, chilling her to the bone. The room was empty except for a portrait on the wall, depicting a woman who could only be Elizabeth, her eyes seeming to convey a sense of sorrow and warning. Feeling a growing sense of unease, Emily knew she needed to gather more information and evidence to unravel the mill's mysteries. She decided to return to the village to seek out those who might hold the knowledge of the mill's past. As she made her way back, the mill's silhouette grew smaller against the backdrop of the setting sun. Emily felt a strange mixture of relief and trepidation. She was determined to uncover the secrets of the mill, no matter what it took. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a sense of foreboding crept over Emily. She knew that the mill at night could reveal even more secrets, but it also harbored unknown dangers. Despite the warnings and her own fears, she decided to visit the mill again under the cover of darkness, armed with more equipment and a newfound resolve. The villagers watched her with a mix of curiosity and concern as she passed through the village, their whispers following her like a ghostly chorus. The weight of their eyes was almost tangible as she disappeared into the shadow of the mill. The mill at night was a different beast altogether, its silhouette stark against the starlit sky. The wind howled through the cracks, a mournful sound that seemed to carry the mill's tales of woe. Emily took a deep breath, her flashlight cutting a swathe through the darkness as she stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. She began by setting up motion-sensitive cameras in each corner of the mill, and next to the basement cistern, she placed an electromagnetic field detector. Alexander had explained that many supernatural phenomena were accompanied by unusual electromagnetic activity. As the hours ticked by, the atmosphere within the mill grew increasingly oppressive. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through, extinguishing all the candles and plunging the mill into darkness. Emily and Alexander clutched each other's hands, bracing for whatever might come. The howling wind was soon joined by a blood-curdling scream that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the mill. The sound was filled with agony and rage, sending shivers down Emily's spine. Alexander quickly adjusted the recording equipment, desperate to capture this chilling evidence. The phenomena within the mill intensified as the ritual progressed. Furniture moved of its own accord, windows rattled violently, and strange shadows danced along the walls. Emily and Alexander fought to maintain their composure, continuing the ritual despite the mounting terror. At the peak of the ritual, Emily felt an invisible force pushing her towards the cistern. She struggled against it, but the force was overwhelming. As she was about to be plunged into the water, Alexander lunged forward, grabbing her hand with all his might. Together, they resisted the entity's power, a battle of wills that tested their very limits. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ritual ended. The mill fell silent, the entity's fury seemingly spent. Exhausted, Emily and Alexander collapsed to the ground, their breaths coming in ragged gasps, but their hearts filled with the elation of success. In the days that followed, they analyzed the recordings from the ritual. The device had captured a series of whispers, faint at first but growing clearer. The word truth echoed through the recordings, a plea or a warning from the entity that had haunted the mill. Emily realized that while the entity's anger had been appeased, the mill's secrets still lay buried in the dust of history. She resolved to write a book, not only to share her experiences, but also to ensure that the story of the mill and its restless spirits would never be forgotten. As the word truth echoed through the recordings, Emily and Alexander knew they had to delve deeper into the mill's history to uncover the secrets that lay buried within its ancient stones. They spent days poring over old documents, searching for any mention of the Henry family and their connection to the mill's supernatural occurrences. Emily's research led her to the town archives, where she uncovered faded newspapers and public records that hinted at the mill's dark past. She learned that the Henry family had once been a prominent and wealthy lineage in the region, but their reputation had been marred by their involvement in secret religious rituals that were shrouded in controversy and suspicion. Alexander, meanwhile, analyzed the unusual electromagnetic frequencies captured during the ritual. He believed these frequencies were not of human origin, but rather a form of communication from the other side. The more he studied the recordings, the more he became convinced that the entity they had encountered was trying to convey a message that had been silenced for far too long. Together, they discovered that the mill had been a hub of activity for a cult that worshipped ancient nature deities, and the Henry family had been at the center of it. The cult's practices had led to the mill's prosperity, but also to its eventual downfall when the local population turned against them. Determined to expose the truth, Emily and Alexander decided to return to the mill at night, armed with historical records and the latest equipment to document any paranormal activity. They believed that by understanding the past, they could help the restless spirit find peace. As night fell, they made their way to the mill, the air charged with anticipation. They set up their equipment in the areas where they had previously detected the most activity, including the basement where the entity had manifested. The atmosphere in the mill was tense as they waited for signs of the entity. Suddenly, the temperature dropped dramatically, and the candles they had lit flickered and went out. The howling wind returned, this time accompanied by the sound of chains dragging across the floor and the distant tolling of a bell that no one could trace. Emily and Alexander huddled together, their eyes scanning the darkness for any signs of movement. The recording equipment whirred, capturing the chilling sounds that filled the mill. They heard the faint whispers again, but this time, they were clearer, more insistent. As they listened, they realized the whispers were not just random sounds but were forming words, sentences, a narrative that spoke of betrayal, greed, and a terrible curse that had befallen the Henry family. The entity was trying to tell them about a pact made in desperation and the consequences that followed. The more they listened, the more the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The Henry family had made a deal with a powerful entity to gain wealth and power, but they had broken the pact, leading to a series of tragic events that ended with the family's ruin and the mill's abandonment. With this knowledge, Emily and Alexander knew they had to find a way to break the curse and release the spirit from its eternal torment. They believed that by performing a ritual to absolve the family's sins and restore balance, they could put the spirit to rest. The stakes had never been higher and the danger more real. But for Emily and Alexander, there was no turning back. They had to see this through to the end, no matter what horrors they might face in the shadows of the mill's history. Determined to break the curse that haunted the Henry family and the old mill, Emily and Alexander embarked on a perilous journey into the depths of local folklore and the supernatural. They spent sleepless nights studying the ancient texts and conducting seances in the hope of communicating with the entities that resided within the mill. As they delved deeper into the history, they uncovered tales of a pact made with a malevolent spirit, one that demanded a terrible price for the wealth and influence it bestowed upon the Henry family. The more they learned, the more they realized that the spirit was not just a figment of old wives' tales, but a powerful force that had shaped the fate of the mill and the village for centuries. One fateful evening, as the moon hung heavy in the sky, Emily and Alexander conducted a ritual in the mill's heart, hoping to make contact with the spirit that had once been a member of the Henry family. They believed that by speaking with the spirit, they could find a way to absolve the sins of the past and release it from its earthly bonds. The atmosphere in the mill was thick with tension as they began the ritual. Incense filled the air, and the flickering light of candles cast dancing shadows on the walls. As Emily and Alexander chanted the ancient words, the temperature in the room seemed to drop, and a chilling wind swept through the mill, extinguishing the candles one by one. Suddenly, a series of knocks echoed through the mill, each more forceful than the last. The sound seemed to be coming from the very foundation of the building, as if something was trying to break free from beneath the earth. Emily's heart raced as she recognized the pattern of the knocks. Morse code 4, help me. Alexander quickly set up his equipment to record the phenomenon. While Emily continued the ritual, her voice trembling with fear but resolute. They were communicating with the spirit, and it was pleading for their assistance. The spirit revealed that it was, in fact, the restless soul of Elizabeth Henry, who had been wrongfully accused of witchcraft by her own family and had perished in the mill. Her death had been a sacrifice to the malevolent spirit in a desperate attempt to save the family's fortunes. But instead of finding peace, her soul had been trapped, forced to witness the decay of her family's legacy and the curse that her sacrifice had unleashed. With this knowledge, Emily and Alexander knew they had to perform a purification ritual to cleanse the mill of the malevolent spirit's influence and set Elizabeth's soul free. They gathered the necessary components for the ritual, including sacred herbs, crystals, and items that had belonged to Elizabeth, hoping that these would serve as a bridge between the living and the dead. As they prepared for the ritual, the mill seemed to come alive with malevolent energy. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut, and the air was filled with a cacophony of wails and whispers. It was as if the spirit was trying to prevent them from completing the ritual, to keep its hold on the mill and the souls it had claimed. Undeterred, Emily and Alexander pressed on, their determination fueled by the knowledge that they were not only fighting for the peace of Elizabeth's soul, but also for the future of the village. They had to succeed. The fate of the mill and all those connected to it depended on it. As the moon reached its zenith, Emily and Alexander stood in the heart of the mill, the air thick with anticipation. They had prepared a purification ritual, hoping to cleanse the mill of the malevolent spirit and release Elizabeth Henry's trapped soul. The atmosphere was tense, the mill's groans and creaks echoing their own trepidation. Alexander, with his expertise in the paranormal, had brought along a smudging stick, its sage ready to be lit. Emily clutched a bundle of Elizabeth's personal effects, hoping the items would serve as a conduit for her spirit. They began the ritual, their voices trembling yet resolute as they chanted the ancient incantations. The mill responded to their efforts with a vengeance. Windows shattered, sending shards of glass across the room. A sudden gust of wind swept through the mill, howling like a vengeful spirit. Emily and Alexander clung to each other, their faces pale in the dim light of their candles. The temperature dropped sharply, and the mill's old timbers groaned under the strain of some unseen force. The air itself seemed to press down upon them, making it difficult to breathe. Emily's eyes widened as she saw shadows moving just beyond the edge of her vision, shapes that were not there a moment ago. Alexander's equipment whirred, capturing the chaos around them. The EMF reader spiked, indicating an intense spiritual presence. They were not alone. Suddenly, a piercing wail cut through the air, a sound of such anguish and fury that it made Emily's blood run cold. The wail was followed by a series of thumps, as if someone was being dragged across the floor above them. Emily and Alexander exchanged a terrified glance. They were in the presence of something powerful and very, very angry. Determined to see the ritual through, Emily lit the sage, the smoke rising in thick, blue tendrils. Alexander rang a brass bell, its clear tone cutting through the cacophony. They moved in unison, their steps deliberate as they wove a circle around the center of the mill, invoking the protection of the elements and calling upon the spirits of the earth to aid them. The mill seemed to shake with rage, the very walls trembling as if trying to expel the spirit that had taken root within. Emily's hands shook as she scattered salt along the perimeter, creating a barrier against the malevolent forces. As the ritual reached its climax, a figure materialized before them, a woman in tattered clothing, her eyes filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed to swallow the light around her. Elizabeth Henry had manifested, her spirit torn between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Emily approached the apparition, her voice steady as she spoke the words of release. "Elizabeth, you are no longer bound by the sins of the past. You are free to leave this place and find peace." The spirit of Elizabeth seemed to hear her, her gaze focusing on Emily. A look of gratitude passed across her ethereal face, and for a moment, the mill was silent. Then, with a final, shuddering sigh, Elizabeth's spirit dissolved into the air, the mill shaking one last time as if releasing a long-held breath. Exhausted, Emily and Alexander slumped to the ground, the energy drained from them. The mill was quiet now, the spirit's vengeful presence gone. They had succeeded in breaking the curse and freeing Elizabeth's soul. In the days that followed, the mill stood silent, no longer the hub of restless spirits. The villagers, once fearful, began to speak of the mill with a newfound respect. Emily and Alexander knew they had made a difference, not just for Elizabeth but for the entire village. Emily's book, detailing their harrowing experience and the truth behind the mill's dark history, became a sensation. She used her profits to restore the mill, turning it into a museum that honored Elizabeth's memory and educated visitors about the importance of respecting history and the supernatural. As the years passed, Emily became a renowned author, her name synonymous with bravery and truth. She never forgot the mill and the spirit that had set her on this path, and she continued to write, always searching for the next untold story. The successful ritual marked a turning point for Emily and the village. The mill, once a place of fear and mystery, became a symbol of resilience and redemption. Emily's book, The Mill's Spirit, detailed the harrowing journey and the truth behind the Henry family's dark history. It quickly rose to bestseller status, and she became a sought-after speaker, sharing her experiences at conferences and on television. The village, once shrouded in the shadow of the mill's curse, now basked in a new light. The mill was transformed into a cultural center, with a small museum dedicated to Elizabeth Henry and the history of the mill. Each year, on the anniversary of the ritual, a commemorative event was held, drawing visitors from near and far to pay their respects and learn about the village's storied past. Emily spent her days giving tours of the mill, her voice filled with a mix of reverence and pride as she recounted the tale of the restless spirit she had helped to set free. The mill's garden became a place of tranquility, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the enduring human spirit. As the years went by, Emily's health began to decline, but her spirit remained undimmed. She continued to write, penning stories that inspired and educated, always returning to the themes of history and the supernatural. Her work left an indelible mark on the literary world and on the hearts of those who read her words. One warm spring day, as the flowers in the mill's garden bloomed in a riot of colors, Emily sat on a bench, gazing at the spot where the mill had once stood. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that she had lived a life full of purpose and meaning. With a gentle sigh, she closed her eyes, her work on this earth done. The villagers, upon finding her, wept for the loss of their beloved friend and guide. They laid her to rest in the garden she had so cherished, her grave marked by a simple stone inscribed with the words, "A seeker of truth, a teller of tales." The legacy of Emily Hawthorne lived on in the village, and her story became a legend passed down through generations. The mill's garden was tended by the villagers, ensuring that the memory of Emily and the spirits she had helped to release would never be forgotten. Each spring, as the flowers bloomed, the villagers would gather to share stories of Emily's courage and wisdom. Her life and work served as a reminder that every place has a story to tell and every story deserves to be heard. In the end, Emily's name and the secret of the mill became a part of the village's soul, a tale of bravery, truth, and the power of reconciliation. Her spirit, now at peace, watched over the village and the mill, a guardian of the past and a beacon for the future. As Emily and Alexander bravely uncovered the secrets of the old mill, our journey through this haunting tale draws to a close. Thank you for joining us on this chilling adventure. Your engagement, comments, and enthusiasm fuel our passion to create more spine-tingling stories. If you enjoyed this tale, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Until then, stay curious. And remember, every shadow has a story,